Naked at Night with Lance Richland, me, and Rick Rosner. Rick Rosner has the highest IQ in America, and he is a little late because he's getting chicken. Ah, so I guess that's an endorsement.
I was here to ask that, as producer of the show, does Popeyes get an endorsement check? Do we get an endorsement check from Popeyes and all along those lines? Because we might have to talk to Popeyes because I definitely have eaten Popeyes myself, have hit Bojangles and all along those lines. Popeyes has some great dirty rice, by the way. So I don't know if you have that brown rice or the macaroni and cheese, but they definitely have some amazing things in that category and all along those lines. So glad to see that you're back, Rick. Just grubbing on that Popeyes, making
Yeah,
me
yeah.
hungry. And it's too late to get Popeyes here in Durham, North Carolina. So y'all in California, y'all can get it because it's about 9 o'clock there, but it's about midnight here. So it's much too late to get Popeyes. I just had some Mediterranean food earlier and all along those lines. And Lance, I've got to really tease you and everything because I could be wrong, but I think I literally cleaned my plate. There was nothing there and everything. So the plate has been totally cleaned. I think it's been totally gone. So there's very little left. So I think I demolished it.
Thank you for staying up late with us. This is a bi-coastal show, so it's happening at 9 p.m. and at midnight.
By the way,
And
you're in North Carolina.
That is correct.
You have a representative Bishop that is a real star in the U.S. Congress.
Which star are you talking about, Mr. Tillis?
Representative Bishop,
Oh,
James Bishop. Anyway,
yes.
he's a North Carolinian.
I assume he's a Republican if you think he's a star.
Yeah, he's a terrific guy. He's trying to save the country from the Democrat regime.
You guys always think the country is in danger of falling into some horrible morass or
Well,
worse.
let's see. The election was stolen. There
No,
are
no, no, no.
there are
Hold on. Let's
there
hold
are
off on the
there are
nonsense. for
there
half
are
a second.
thousands of January 6th patriots that are being put in prison
Right.
without trial. The FBI is raiding the homes of all the prominent Republicans. I myself can't be on Twitter. Our stuff's been taken off YouTube
You can be
and
on Twitter.
Facebook.
Elon Musk is very sympathetic.
That, well, I
to you
can't.
guys.
I've asked.
What? What did
But that's a diversion, Rick. I don't want to talk about whether Elon Musk will let me on Twitter, which he won't.
Why won't he let all these conservatives back on?
Okay. Well, he didn't let me on, and he doesn't. He
When
hasn't-
was the last time you asked?
You already did, like a few weeks ago. But the point is that conservative voices are being removed from the internet, and prominent conservatives are being imprisoned for nothing.
If they pooped in the Capitol, yeah, they go.
No, that we have grandmothers that walked in there and took some selfies
Well,
that are now in prison. They're not even giving them trials.
I find that there's why because they're being held before trial.
For 3 years without a trial.
Yeah, but this happened in 21 and it's only 23, so 23 minus 21 is 2.
Oh, only 2 years without a trial. Well, thank God you know math.
I know this is one of the times where if we've done this show for about 5 years, and this is one of the, if we were doing the show old format where we only had about 300 people watching us on YouTube, this is where I'd say stop, cut, and we would go look up and see if there are any actual grandmas being held without bail for 2 years. And because I don't, but we're not.
I know you could never believe that the Democrats would do such a thing, huh?
I,
I'm not making this up. But
but sometimes
by the
it
way-
turns out that
By
there
the
are.
way, I want to know something else. This week, the report was released on the FBI and Clinton involvement on the Russian collusion hoax.
Yeah. I don't call it a hoax, but okay.
Yeah, well, you should call it a hoax because the report stated that the whole thing was made up by Hillary Clinton's campaign. That's
Is this the Durham?
the Durham report.
Out of which, like, there was like one person charged with a minor.
No, there were two people that were charged, but he said that, and one of them was convicted. But he stated that that Hillary Clinton made up the whole, paid for the dossier, paid $1 million to a British intelligence guy, and that he hired out of that a Russian living in the U.S. And they wrote the dossier, they made it up, then they presented it to Obama. Actually, Brennan of the CIA said that this is what's going to happen. It was presented that they were making this up, and for 3 years, well, longer, for 5 years now, you've been telling me
This is an
that
argument we've been
that
having
Trump,
since
yeah, but
2016 or
yeah,
2017.
yeah, but the argument's over. You lost. You were wrong.
No, because like no, the Durham investigation and report resulted in two people getting charged, one person with minor stuff. Now,
No, it wasn't minor. The FBI changed evidence.
But
Okay, what happened was an FBI lawyer wanted to be able to surveil the Trump campaign. So what he did was he wrote to the CIA and asked if one of their people who was working for the Trump campaign was a spy. And the CIA wrote back, no, he works for us.
Carter, what's his Carter Page?
Or no, Carter, yeah. And so the FBI changed the document to say that he was not working for the CIA.
Yeah, I remember this was an
They
argument.
framed it.
This is something we went over like 3-4 years
Yeah,
ago.
but that's proof that they had to change evidence in order to surveil
Yeah, and the
Trump. result
result is that it changed the level of investigation they were doing. They were already there was already
No. What it meant was it meant that they could get a FISA warrant to tap. Well, they don't tap phones anymore, but they could surveil using whatever sophisticated equipment they had to anybody in the Trump
it
campaign.
changed the level of investigation.
No. What it did was it gave them permission to surveil the Trump campaign. It didn't change the level of anything. I know you have that in your head because you keep repeating that phrase, but that's not what happened. That gave them permission to surveil the Trump campaign because it's a two-step process. If they can surveil Carter Page, they can surveil anybody that he speaks to and anybody that person speaks to.
But even without that, they were still going to investigate people around.
No, the basis of the whole scandal was the Steele dossier, which was written.
No, you keep saying that, but no, there was plenty of other stuff
But
besides
that's not what
Steele.
that's not what the Durham report says. I just read the Durham report.
You read
I
all.
didn't read all 200 pages. I read excerpts of it, and it said the genesis of the whole Russian collusion hoax
But that's not accurate.
was from this. Well,
it
so
was-
you got to go fight with Durham.
Yeah. All right.
Hey, Lance, and Rick, I got a quick question for you because y'all were earlier eating and they're still eating, you and the crew in there, everything, some Popeyes and some, there is a major competition that they have that is part of what they are involved with. And it comes back to y'all's conversation because I know that Chick-fil-A prides itself on being a Christian organization and also has done a lot of support for right-wing politics, and definitely the founder Tony Perkins has definitely come out and supported a lot of the politics of the right and all in that kind of space. And he definitely is proud of his Christian heritage and all in that kind of way. But you know, the other thing is that y'all don't know this, but later on today, like I think around 7 o'clock today or something, Bernie Sanders is actually going to be here in Durham, and he's going to be here with Reverend Barber. And part of what they're going to be discussing is this push to have the wages raised to $17 an hour. And apparently Popeyes, where you're getting your food from, has gotten into some troubles for their pay rates, because apparently the cooks at Popeyes are only getting $8.32 an hour as a cook, and the parent company made a revenue of $5.35 billion back in 2018. But there are some people that are talking about their stance as a pay organization and all in that space. And that was just one example. So I was just wondering, Rick, because I know you're very liberal and everything. You got some Popeyes. Do you think that these workers need to get $17 an hour, and were you going to give them $9 of the order that you just made to them, since they are apparently being woefully underpaid?
Well, I mean, certainly in LA they should get 17 an hour because LA is expensive. I don't know, what the cost of living is in other states, but I can't imagine there's a state where 832 is close to a living wage. It might be okay. I mean, it used to be that fast food jobs went to high school kids who, didn't have, who were living at home and, didn't have the expenses of some, but that's no longer the case. So yeah, 832 is pretty bad. We should talk about, so we're going to move on from Durham. And I continue to believe that Trump, you always accuse me of saying Trump was a Russian spy, which I've never claimed. I do believe that Trump was a Russian dupe, was always kind of too affectionate, too kind of, in bro love with Putin. But let's move on from that.
Wait a minute.
Hold on. You got to make major points.
If you're gonna say that, this is good that we're having a new show here.
No, I want to talk about Chick-fil-A.
No, you just said that you thought that Trump was in bro love with Putin. Now, this is a very interesting thing, and I'll bet Mark has never heard of this. There was a battle in Syria between American and Russian forces during the Trump administration. And Rick pretends that doesn't matter. Under the Trump administration, the two forces, as you recall, we had both countries had troops in Syria. The Russians attacked our troops, and Trump ordered that they defend themselves. They killed 300 Russian troops.
Were they actual Russian soldiers?
Yes, they were.
They weren't Russian mercenaries?
Well, they were from the Wagner Group.
Yeah, so so I don't know if
it's the Wagner Group works for the Russian government.
So I don't know if it's a big distinction.
No, it isn't. You're quibbling.
But
Mark,
hold on. But let's be clear. They weren't Russian soldiers. They were Russian citizens hired to be mercenaries by this company that sells its services to.
There may have been Russian troops, and also they were there under the mandate of the Russian government. You can't just take soldiers. And
no, I'll give you this. This did happen, though. If you look at it, I mean, we miss a lot of subtlety, and some of the subtleties are important. Some of the subtleties aren't important.
They were stationed
but if you look at
by the Russian government.
But if you look at that one thing,
they were Russian soldiers working for the Russian government, and they were killed under Trump's orders.
Yeah, but then what I say a lot is Google it and read about it, because
you can't argue. That's why.
Because I don't listen to 50 hours worth of podcasts a week.
Yeah, but for 4 years now, I've been telling you about this battle.
I know it, and
you keep saying no, it didn't happen. I don't
back
believe
in 2019 or 2018. I went I Googled it, I read about it, and I could talk about it with you in some degree of detail.
I don't remember much detail about it. All I remember is that I don't believe Trump would have killed 300 Russian soldiers and can then be credibly accused of being a Russian dupe.
Well, you take that on the one hand, and then you take everything else on the other hand.
What's the other? On the other hand, what's the other hand?
All the things that Trump did.
Name three.
That he continues to be. Well, I mean, he interfered with getting arms to Ukraine.
No, he didn't. Under Trump, we gave them very valuable anti-tank missiles that the Obama administration had denied them. The Obama administration was the administration that only sent them blankets and medical supplies.
So Trump has continued to, I don't know what his stance is on Ukraine versus Russia right now. But he's continued to say things, I believe, that are supportive of Putin.
No, he said that he could end the war if they allowed him to negotiate.
He didn't say how.
I
Because
know.
He
There's
didn't
only
say what he would happen under a
okay,
negotiated
as I say,
settlement.
there's only one way it can end through negotiation.
Yeah,
There's
but he didn't say
there's
what the terms of the negotiation.
why should he?
So anyway, I want to move on from this.
Okay.
So, because Chick-fil-A is interesting, because Chick-fil-A isn't open on Sundays because they're a very Christian company.
Mhm.
And until like 2 weeks ago, Chick-fil-A was in good favor among conservatives. Then they appointed a black guy as head of diversity. And a lot of conservatives are now, I don't know if it's a huge movement. It's certainly not as big as Boycott Target, but a lot of conservatives are angry at Chick-fil-A for even having a head of diversity. So, I mean, that's interesting a little bit to me that people are pissed at Chick-fil-A. I personally think Popeyes tastes better than Chick-fil-A. I think it's less greasy, just as tasty, but less salty. So there you go.
But how do you feel about the other stereotypical chicken franchise? Because I'm not gonna lie, usually if I get chicken, I get either Popeyes or I get Bojangles, and of course Bojangles has that interesting history around the name Bojangles and everything. But it does have good chicken, not as good as Popeyes.
We don't have as many Bojangles out here. I've never been to a Bojangles. I would like to try it.
Hang on, take your shirt off. Here's what we're gonna do. Every time we move your head, I'm gonna hit you.
Okay, but to hear Mark,
I don't need to have your shirt off. Unless
you just told me to take my shirt.
no, okay, just be in the pose now. Okay, lower your head. All right, raise it up a little bit. Great. Okay, don't move.
Okay. So I had some topics that we could talk about without yelling at each other.
Okay.
The first is humor. I was out on the picket line with the Kimmel people today. We picketed mostly Disney, but then ABC is a couple blocks away from Disney, so we walked by there. And so it was nice to see all those people. But anyway, I've got a comedy history. I've written more than 120,000 jokes. You grew up with one of the greatest comedy writers of his era, your dad.
He was voted that, though. It's not our opinion. He was voted that by the critics.
Voted the greatest comedy writer of.
They had something called Filmdom's Famous Fives, and he was considered in the top 5 of Hollywood in 1960, I think, or 64. One of the early 60s.
So,
Hey, Lance, speaking of critics, growing up, I remember watching, and I was a fan of Roger and Ebert and everything. But I'm just wondering, what did your dad think of critics like Roger and Ebert? And did he have a great deal of respect? And of course, everybody loved watching their point counterpoint kind of arguments about a movie that was coming out and all along those lines. I know there are other more recent critics, but what was your dad's opinion of the critics like Roger and Ebert?
My father's films always got good reviews, except for one film that he did, and he did this film with Barbra Streisand called For Pete's Sake, and that particular film didn't get very good reviews, but it still was a big hit, probably because of Barbra Streisand being at her peak at that point.
wasn't that like, it seems like she had a huge hit with What's Up, Doc?
Yeah, this was sort of a sequel, not a sequel, but it was a follow-up kind of.
It was trying to be the same thing.
Yeah, and what happened was the director took out half of the jokes because he didn't think he was an action film director, and he said these things could never happen. So he said that would never happen in real life. So he took out half of the jokes. So the film wasn't quite as funny as my dad wrote it, and so he wasn't mad at the critics for that. The rest of his films got great reviews. He actually has 2 films in the top, 50 comedies of all time.
The Writers Guild list?
I don't know who makes the list, but he did okay by critics.
Sounds like he did and everything. What was his thought around campy classics? Because I know there are a couple of TV shows and even movies that were not that great in terms of their scripts or things along those lines, but folks still love them and everything. Actually, here in North Carolina, a friend of mine actually did the score for Jeepers Creepers, and that would be one of those that is a cult classic. And of course, there is Rocky Horror Picture Show, which is a cult classic, and there are a number of others as well. So just wondering, Rick and Lance, what your thoughts are around the cult classics, and if you have any favorite cult classics. Because, like I said, I know I personally don't like clowns, and part of that is because of the original movie It. But I did see Jeepers Creepers after I realized that my friend John Howie had written the score for that. I think for both of them, both that one and the sequel, and all along those lines. But what is your thoughts around cult classics, and is there a favorite cult classic that you both have enjoyed?
One of my favorite movies, and it's not really a cult classic, but it's an enduring movie, is Groundhog Day. And I don't know, it's just a movie that holds up. And then Tom Cruise did a similar movie, except with lots of killing and dying, called Edge of Tomorrow, which is about a guy who lives the same day.
What about you, Lance? You got any cult classic favorites, or would you ever bother to see Jeepers Creepers?
Well, I don't know. I've never seen that film, but or show. But the my favorite comedy turns out not to be a cult classic. It's just a classic. Monty Python and the Holy Grail is now considered the ninth best comedy ever written. I don't know what the other 8 are or 10, but
Which one was that?
the Holy Grail,
Oh, the Holy Grail. I got you right.
it was the first Monty Python film.
And it's a medieval quest starring Monty Python.
Yeah, and I also liked Doctor Strangelove, which is also not really a cult classic because it's a classic.
And as far as some of the cult classics are like schlocky horror. Jeepers Creepers, I think, was a pretty classy horror movie. Was that the one that takes place in a mortuary?
Yeah, I believe so, if I remember correctly.
It's got like spiky balls that fly, I think, and impale people.
Yeah, I want to say this.
But I don't like movies with a high body count just for the sake of having a high body count.
Well, that was my issue with movies like what is it, Jason and Freddy Krueger and all of those. They seem to have high body counts, even though I know that there are a number of folks that like those slasher kind of movies, but they never really resonated with me.
What did your dad think about? Did he write for TV much at all?
My father wrote for TV, but he liked classics. He liked the Marx Brothers. He liked Woody Allen. He liked Laurel and Hardy and Chaplin. So he had classic tastes.
Well, what did he think about the lazy TV of the 60s and 70s?
Yeah, he thought he didn't watch any sitcoms or anything. He didn't watch. He was always criticizing the shows we would see. It was so funny. Sometimes I would think he wasn't paying attention, and then he'd speak up and say, "Ha! The writer didn't have a good line for that, so they switched scenes." Or he'd say, they couldn't think of an ending, so they just went to commercial. So he was very critical. He knew what he was looking at towards the end, and he would tell me some amazing things about the film industry. I knew who was gay and who wasn't. I knew who was having affairs, which I can't repeat now because it was all, in secret. But it was
Wasn't everybody pretty much banging everybody because they were protected by the studios and everybody was beautiful, right? I mean, all these huge stars, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, okay, yeah, that's it. Everyone was banging everyone. So that way, there's not. I don't have to reveal specific
I mean, it
names.
seems like, I mean, didn't matter which sex they were, as long as everybody was super,
Yeah, but one of the other things that happened all the time in those early TV shows, and I think we alluded to it on one of the early episodes of this show and everything, was there would be these trips that would not make any sense. Like I was a fan of Charlie's Angels, I was a fan of Wonder Woman, I was a fan of a number of those shows, but I'm sitting there and I could never figure out why you would be wearing a bathing suit on a ski trip. And that was definitely a kind of one of those writing tricks that didn't make much sense, but would happen on some of the 70s kind of police dramas and things of that nature, because you're sitting there going like, okay, you're on a ski trip, you're in the middle of Colorado or Seattle or wherever the ski resorts were and everything, and you've got your bathing suit. Why are you wearing a bathing suit on a ski trip?
70s TV had two things. We running out of time here?
We still got time.
We'll get to it. 70s TV had two things working against it. One was culture of censorship. But there was just a bunch of stuff that you didn't talk about, during prime time, family entertainment. And two was laziness that was born of monopoly. There were three major broadcast networks in the 70s and the 60s, and there was very little else you could turn to on TV. And so you took what they gave you and you had to like it, even if you didn't like it. And I feel like, I don't know how much rewriting went on in the 70s on TV shows. Maybe I'm being unfair, but I feel like people left work fairly early in those days, writing and shooting. A lot of stuff felt slapped together. And it wasn't till like Hill Street Blues in the early 80s that you started to get more sophisticated plotting, storylines, like there were always prestige productions, but they were kind of isolated. Like the Twilight Zone was kind of a prestige, well-written production, but that was just because Rod Serling was a good writer, and there wasn't an emphasis on trying to make TV better until there was more competition via HBO and then all the other channels that started coming in the 80s.
Yep, I definitely agree with you. By the way, for those that are watching, we're trying to figure out what Jeepers Creepers was. The IMDb listing says a brother and sister driving home through isolated countryside for spring break encounter a flesh-eating creature which is in the midst of its ritualistic eating spree. And one of their taglines was, "What's eating you?" I'm not sure that would play because of some of the sexual nature of things in that phrase in this particular day and time, but it played at that time when it was on and all in that kind of way. But definitely that is the tagline. So yeah, it was two folks that were traveling and they were trying to avoid this creature that was on a eating spree.
Yeah, I most horror movies just kind of bum me out because I know most people are going to get killed. So I'll watch a little bit and then I'll like turn before the slaughter starts. There's a movie I think called X, which is about a bunch of sleazeballs making a porno on a farm, and apparently the farm family is like the family in Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and they're all going to get killed. So,
but Lance and Rick, there are certain things within certain things that know going to happen in a horror film. Generally, if a minority character is introduced, more than likely he's going to get killed early on and everything. And I have never understood. Maybe y'all can explain this to me. Lance, your dad was a writer. Maybe you can explain it to me. But if you are having an incident where you have already been attacked, something has killed you, whether that was a shark, whether that was a monster, whether that was a ghost and everything, and then the next scene, everybody decides that they're going to go into the basement to investigate it or go into the ocean to investigate it. It seems to me like maybe it's just me and common sense, but if something is already eating one of your friends, I'm not going down there to investigate it. I'm going to leave it alone. But maybe that's just me and everything. But for example, in the middle of this show, if somebody was to come right here, right now, and eat up Rick, are you going to stick around and try to investigate it, or are you going to leave it and exit, you and the musician and everybody? Are you going to exit stage left, or are y'all going to try to go down in the basement if he's dragged into the basement and all in that space? I personally am going to be like, hey, it was fun knowing you, Rick, but I'm not investigating, and particularly not going in that same space.
So one of the problems with writing we're done. We're going to break. We'll come back.
All right, we'll take a break right now. We'll come back with more. We're going to take a break.
The only trick you need to save time and money is to shop at Aldi. Aldi. Shop differently. Limitless length plus volume. Sensational from every angle. New Lash Sensational Sky High Mascara. Only from Maybelline, New York. Everything that touches your baby should be this comforting. Pampers Swaddlers. The #1 choice of hospitals is 2 times softer. All right, Trivago. Find me a hotel somewhere in Thailand where I can wake up with a view of the ocean. Awesome. The future. It's impossible to see. And when it's finally here, it might not be what you'd expect. It might just be better. Introducing Luxury Electric. Introducing Lucid Air. We're for those who love to discover, who don't need to travel to find something new, and who know when you spend less, you can discover even more at TJ Maxx and Marshalls. Smooth, velvety chocolate wrapped in precious gold. Ferrero Rocher.
You know how people love to enjoy food and don't understand how to flavor their food or how to replicate a meal? They're interested in supplements but don't know where to begin? Well, what I do is I take the guesswork out of enjoying flavor and wellness with my flavorful spice blends so that they can create delicious meals with healing benefits. Can Do Spice was created to help cooks at any level enjoy healing through food. Every spice blend was designed to give added health benefits of natural herbs. Every blend is complete. There's no need to add any additional spice for a delicious meal. Saving you time and money while adding supplements to your meals can be both tasty and fun. My earliest memories in the kitchen began with my father, Kenny Can Do Bond, so it was fitting that I would name this line after him. I have always looked to natural remedies to supplement the body, and I found myself hiding herbs and minerals in foods for my family. That's when it hit me. Everyone needs Can Do Spice. Everyone should be having this. It's an exclusive brand for cooks at any level who want to create flavorful dishes with healing benefits that can satisfy the body and soul. Add a little spice to your life. Give Can Do Spice a try.
At Shirley Lou and Associates, powered by First Financial Security, our mission is to help all people achieve financial security and peace of mind.
My team and I are here to help you reach financial security tomorrow and for generations to come.
She is one of the most sincere and compassionate people that I will ever meet in my life. She sincerely wants to build a legacy where no young woman that she meets is left destitute, that they are able to be self-sufficient, to provide for a family in an emergency, to build for their future and for our future generations.
At Shirley Lou and Associates, we are changing the face of insurance and retirement plans. Our mission is to lead, empower, and grow. We are the home of tax-free retirement. We provide comprehensive planning for businesses, rollovers for retirees, and individual personal financial planning.
I'm a very people-oriented person. It's important for me to make sure my clients feel in a safe environment, make sure I feel in a safe environment, that I can trust the people that I'm working with. And I feel that here working with Shirley and my team. These people are more like family to me.
We believe entrepreneurship is a possibility for all walks of life.
Reach out to us. We would love to have a conversation to see how we